Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Park Chan-wook's Oldboy. Now this is the original one, of course, 2003 version, South Korean film, and yes, directed by Park Chan-wook. Now this is a film that I rewatched last night, and I think I've maybe seen it 3 or 4 times now. My first viewing was in 2014. I think it was, I saw it on IMDb. I was going through the top 250, and I'd heard of it anyway. I'd wanted to see it for quite a while. And I eventually, I sat down to it in 2014. Yes, and I actually only watched half of it, and then my brother wanted to, I told him about it during my break or something, and then he said he wanted to watch it with me. So then I rewatched it, the first half, and then the rest of it, of course, maybe shortly, after that. It wasn't too long after that. So it was 2014, my first viewing, and I was blown away by it. Actually, it's rightfully so. Actually, in the the top 250 on IMDb. And when I was viewing it, and I was just thinking, wow, this is something else. Such a unique film as well, and you've probably heard of this film. There's also a remake. I think it was 2013, and I think that was directed by Spike Lee, and that was a bit odd because I wouldn't have thought, had thought that he would have done a remake of this film. It just doesn't seem like him. But yes. The original version, and it was just blew me away. I was straight away drawn into this film, and the storytelling. I was just sucked straight in because the storytelling in this film is masterful. Let's just get that out of the way. This is one of the most confident pieces of filmmaking, really. Of the 2000s for sure. And it was just such a unique experience, my first viewing, and it's just grown on me ever since. On every viewing, really, like most of the best films that I watch. Every film's a masterpiece. It becomes even more so. And yes, this is very hard to talk about the plot because it may ruin it. But basically, there's this guy, and he's played by Choi Min-sik, Dal-su, and he basically you see him at the beginning, and the very first shot actually is set after the rest of the beginning parts. It's a very non-linear film. For the most part, especially at the beginning and at the end of the film, is quite non-linear. But yes, it basically shows him on a rooftop, and you don't really know what's going on. And straight away adds the mystery there. This is a mystery thriller. It's also an action film and a drama and kind of romance as well. It's got everything in there, and crime thing as crime film. But it's very, very unique. It doesn't really fit into a genre as such. Like the great films. A lot of great films don't. But yes, it basically you see him, first of all, and as well you see him when he's drunk. After that sort of that time jump thing, and he's pissing about, and then he just gets taken, and you see him with his friend at first as well, Dal-su, who he plays Park Choi, and you see him with his friend at first and stuff, and he's got a daughter, and he was phoning her and everything. And then he's just taken after the phone booth, after his conversation, and you see that he's imprisoned, for 15 years, in this kind of hotel. This kind of resembles a hotel, but it's kind of like a prison. It's like a cell, and the first half an hour, I think, really is just him, in that place, and trying to escape. Of course, eventually he does quite early on, it's half an hour so. And it's just the rest of the film really is him just trying to discover why he was put in there, his captors and stuff, motivations and everything behind it, and as well just rediscovering how life, because he had been locked away for this time, and it's that's all really I can say about the plot, because there's loads of twists. A lot of stuff happens, especially in the second half of the film, that really I can't talk about. But yes, it's such an involving film, and straight away I was trying to figure out what's going on. It's one of them films, you get so invested in everything, and the characters as well. This is a thriller really, with masterful characters, and that's great, because there's some thrillers sometimes that overly focus on the plot, and just sometimes even if they're told well, the actual plots and the things that are all the plot points and everything, if it's a good narrative, sometimes if it lacks characters, it still doesn't, do it for me. And I've seen a few films that are like that. But yes, this is a thriller that balances out its characters, its plot, the way the story's told, and the sparks of violence and action perfectly, really, really perfectly. Park Chan-wook, I've not seen any other of his other films, and I'm very intrigued. Now more than ever, really. I think this is actually part of the Vengeance trilogy, unofficial trilogy. I've not seen any of his other films, so I'll definitely be checking them out. Who knows? I might review the rest of them. But I know the rest of his films, a lot of them are meant to be very controversial. But The Handmaiden as well, that really intrigues me. I really want to see that at some point. But yes, this is a film that kind of, it just, it's a very, very violent film, but it's got so much humanity in it. So the characters, the main character of Dal-su is a masterfully written character. Park Chan-wook would be co-writing on this film, and the script throughout is just wonderful. The characters are so well written, and especially this is one of the most unique protagonists we've kind of seen in recent years. It's just so complex, but very, very likable. You kind of, at first you kind of get that sense he's kind of bumbling side to him. The vulnerable side, and when he's drunk and stuff. But then you really do feel sorry for him as the film goes on. But then he does stuff that is very, very shocking. So he's very, very complex in that sense. But I'm always, I was always feeling for him. I always rooted for him throughout the film, no matter what happened, because you can kind of say some of the things that he does is kind of warranted after the imprisonment, you could say. But yes, there's some very graphic stuff in this scene. There's some torture scenes. And it's very, very graphic, but a lot of it though is not it's not very showy in that sense. It's very suggestive, which is great. A lot of the best films do that with violence. Torture scenes, they're just suggestive. And with to do the editing and everything. And the editing in this film is mind blowing. It's so sharp, so perfect. Every single piece of the story is placed perfectly within the actual whole film. It's kind of like I recently reviewed Once Upon a Time in America. When a film can be non-linear but always place different parts of the story and always have a drive going to the next scene, no matter where it is in the timeline. And it never becomes too complex to be confusing or convoluted. Just clear storytelling, but complex in that sense. And this one really just is so well edited. This film, it's unbelievable, and it's very puts you in a trance. It's very much like that. It's got a lot of different layers, but it is very, very realistic and gritty. And the violence, of course, is really, really shocking stuff. But yes, you've got some, very famous scenes actually now. The hallway kind of fight with the hammer and everything, the side-on shot and everything, and just some of the moments which I won't go into are very, very iconic now, and all the action in this film as well is just stunning. But this is it's so unique, and the first half of the film is just constant perfection, really, in terms of the storytelling, the music as well. This has got a wonderful score, and I mean one of the best scores of the 2000s actually. It's so beautiful, so much feeling in it. The theme of Oldboy, it's just absolutely stunning the way it's used throughout the film. It's just wonderful. I always listen to it, and it's used so well in all the right places. It's not overused at all, and it's just, as well. Just the rest of the soundtrack is stunning. Really, it's just used perfectly. The music to kind of elevate and kind of punctuate different scenes. Just the cinematography throughout this film is stunning. This is so masterfully shot, and the use of the colours and everything, and just the framing. It's just wonderful. This is such an artistically shot film, and really there's just nothing less than perfection in terms of the visuals throughout the film, and it's matched by and it's in harmony with the actual narrative and the characters and everything, and it's just so perfect, really. Just every single moment in this film, every frame is just shot so wonderfully. It's really just something else. And just as well, to mention the villain in this film. It's probably one of my favourite villains actually for 2000s. I thought it was wonderful. You know, he's charming, but he's also, you know, hateable, and but you know, it's very complex the way this film turns out. And you know, you may think, you know, basically, you know, when he eventually does discover the villain and you know who imprisoned him, you could say that it's kind of, you know, there's different sides basically to what happens, and why this happened. When you find out the actual motivations and why he was imprisoned, you know, doesn't warrant it fully, but you know, there's many different layers to this. It's very very deep, and you know, the villain is someone you can kind of understand at times, but you know, he's just wonderfully played by Ji-tae, I think it was. Yeah, the actor, and it was, yeah, it's just a wonderful performance, wonderfully written, very complex, and just, you know, the dynamics that play off between him and the protagonist, really really great, and just the backstory you get in the second half of the film. You get a lot of backstory, because of course, you know, the villain of this film is is very much you know, related to the actual protagonist. You know, it's just such a masterfully constructed kind of film in that sense, that the villain and the protagonist are kind of, you know, it's such a dynamic there, and it's just so wonderful in terms of how it plays out, and just all the exposition you get from the villain is just so well done, so well told. Yeah, stunning. You know, there's not much else to say about this film. You know, it's just it is a masterpiece for me, and you know, it was one of the films that really put you know, Korea on the map, and I've not really seen too many, you know, other films, you know, Korean films, but you know, I really look forward to exploring even more. You know, I've seen loads of Japanese films, but you know, other parts of Asia I've not really delved into too much. But I really look forward to of course, the rest of Park Chan-wook's career, and of course just you know, a lot of Asian cinema in general, other than just Japanese. Yeah, but this film is a masterpiece. You know, yes, it's a film that I can just rewatch again and again, and it just gets better and better. You know, with each time. It's such an emotional film. You know, it's character driven, but it's also the way the plot, you know, the plot unfolds. The storytelling in this film is masterful, perfect, really. It's just like you're sucked in so much. But as I've said, the plot never overtakes the characters in that sense, and as well, just the way the filmmaking is in this film is stunning. And there's not a single performance that isn't great, really. You know, and Mido, the character, of course, that the kind of Dal-su is with throughout the film. She is just wonderful, wonderfully written and played, performed. It's just stunning, you know, and that connection, that relationship, however complex it may be, and how it turns out, you know, it's just something that's always compelling, and it's just so warm as well. This is a film full of heart, full of passion, and it's so artistic. You know, so much went into to actually just the cinematography alone, but it's just a wonderful story. You know, it's only 2 hours, start to finish. It's perfection, really, for me, and it's such an emotional film. Very very shocking the way it turns out, especially. And but it's just so beautiful. It's not a film that is exploitive in its violence, and it's just thoroughly human throughout. I have to give this film 100% plus, tier 3. It's probably, you know, it could be in my top 160 films actually of all time, roughly. You know, it's just a stunning film, an absolute masterpiece. You know, if you've not seen it, it's stunning, and I would highly recommend it. You know, I'd recommend, of course, this steelbook. But yes, overall this film is just a masterpiece. Editing, cinematography, direction by Park Chan-wook is flawless. You know, every act builds and builds, and all the pieces of the puzzle are perfectly constructed and placed. But it's always character driven just as much. You know, even more so. And you know, the final shot is wonderful. It really is. Just from, you know, it's just a stunning film, perfection, really, a masterpiece, and highly recommend it. So thanks for watching my review, and yes, I will actually be, one of my next reviews will be a Hitchcock film, because I am watching a Hitchcock tonight. Rewatching, maybe it is, you know, it is probably a rewatch, I haven't decided, but that will kickstart my actual Hitchcock director series, which won't be, you know, his films in chronological order. reviewed. It will be you know, eventually, you know, his 50 or so films reviewed on the channel, and then, you know, put into a playlist, of course, as I go. You know, it's between the films are between tonight. It's going to be the 39 Steps, Lady Vanishes, and Rope. And all three of them I've seen, and this is the rewatch really. But yes, that will be up probably in the next few days. But thanks for watching my review of Park Chan-wook's masterpiece, Oldboy.